Welcome to CIO Insights, successfully navigating the Copilot frontier. As soon as Copilot for Microsoft 365 launched, Cegeka set its course to implement it within the organization. Copilot is a game changer for productivity and collaboration. But how do you implement it successfully within your organization? To find out, we have invited two guests from Cegeka. Valérie, corporate project manager within Cegeka, which means she's working on internal digitization projects, including Copilot. Next to her, Ruben Maris, CIO at Cegeka and head of digital and information office, where driving digitization within Cegeka takes center stage. Today, we want to share our insights and our learnings. So without further ado, let's get started. So Ruben, let me start with you. Can you maybe start with explaining what Digital and Information Office means?
Yeah, sure. So talking about DIO, and that's Digital and Information Office, we actually, if you look at Cegeka has a fleet of ships sailing in the same direction. But all those ships actually need a harbor to get their services for their customers, and that's where DIO steps in. So we are part of the harbor delivering services like the digital workplace or services like Horizon and making sure the ships can fulfill their mission for Cegeka.
Today we're talking about Copilot. Maybe start with AI, artificial intelligence. What is Cegeka vision for artificial intelligence?
Well, it's a core element of our vision. If you look at the landscape today, we all need to acknowledge that our brain is limited, I think. Yeah? There's lots of data coming towards us, lots of tasks coming towards us, and the only way to actually accelerate today is to implement AI. There are several ways of implementing AI. We've got the generative AI fulfilling tasks, but we also have AI actually looking into data and making sure that data becomes actionable insights.
Yes, and how does this also translate to Copilot then?
Copilot is a part where you get the enhancement of the employees. So doing repetitive tasks that take a lot of time, making sure that that gets done for you. So it's a part of the AI strategy of making us faster, better, more qualitative towards our customers actually.
Okay, yeah. Today we hear a lot about Copilot, and we have Copilot for GitHub, Copilot for security. What is it that we are talking about today?
It's the Copilot for Microsoft 365. So that's the Copilot that is included in Outlook, Teams, SharePoint, all those kind of things where you actually work with in Office today.
Yes, your daily use.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe a question for you as a CIO. Are you worried about the security with the implementation of Copilot?
I think every CIO today is worried or concerned at least about security. I think it's an integral part today. You can't open the newspaper without seeing some cyber security incident. So yes, for me the most important part there is typically when implementing SharePoint, you had a lot of information, but it was obfuscated. It was everywhere and nowhere, nobody could find it. Now, with a single click on a button, you can find every document that is available within seconds. So it becomes more and more important to actually protect that information in the right way.
Yeah, okay. Talking about Copilot again, the implementation of it, how do you start such a project?
Well, it needs to be a project. To be clear, it needs to be a project because typically just unleashing it on the organization is not a good idea. Typically, our customers did that with SharePoint, for example, and now we've got a lot of SharePoint sites, a lot of information. People need to use it. But let's go back to the days where you actually used Google, for example, the first time. You need to query it in a certain way. You need to work with it in a certain way. So you need to educate your users on how to use it to get the maximum value. So it needs to be a project to make sure it lands in the organization.
Okay. Valérie, you were the project manager for Copilot. How do you approach this?
So we start with putting together a project team consisting of architects, application architects, enterprise architects, people from the user adoption team, because user adoption was key, but also people who worked with Copilot, our customers. And then when we put this team together, we launched it in 3 waves. Wave 1 were early adopters, people who knew Copilot before we did. I think it were about 80 users. And then the second wave was our biggest wave, 140 users, and they had the minimal material available because we started Copilot way early and user adoption material is not ready yet. And then we had the third wave, and we had insights from wave 1, wave 2, and we put together persona which came from Microsoft as well, and we based our third wave on those persona, which was very useful.
Okay, so the personas were useful to this project. Yeah, as you said, there are people involved. How do you get them involved in such a project?
Yeah, so we defined a user adoption approach, which started with a kickoff for each wave, learning them what is Copilot, how can you use it, what do we expect of you, which is also very important. After the kickoff, we put together a community on Teams where people could ask questions, check their issues, learn about Copilot, and based on these questions which popped up in the community, we launched Q&A sessions. People got the opportunity to ask their own questions, to check how can I use it. And we launched surveys as well. We checked what do you like about Copilot, what don't you like about Copilot, do you have time saving? I think we can come back to that topic later as well. But whatever we learned, we used it. And with that I mean, we learned people needed inspiration. Ruben said it's not just a Google search term. You need to have inspiration for prompting. So we learned that Q&A sessions should evolve towards demonstrations, but even more basing these demonstrations on the specific persona.
Yeah, so the Q&A sessions were also about some knowledge sharing and sharing ideas with each other.
Yes.
It's all about knowledge. It's if you ask it the same way, then you ask Google, you get the same answer, right? So you need to really set the vision of what you want and why you want it and how you want it, and then you get the value out of the product. So people need to understand that you need to ask it like that.
Yeah, so you need to be very clear in what you want and how you want to receive it.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe let's go back to the surveys because I think that's very interesting. You had some results. What are the insights that we get from those surveys?
Yeah, so the surveys were based on the amount of users. So we had 300 users filling in a survey, and we learned that they saved like 5 to 15 minutes a day, which is huge actually. And the second biggest group indicated they save 15 to 30 minutes, but it gets interesting when you look into which applications do they save time. It was mainly Teams, Word, Outlook. Those were huge. Excel was not available at the beginning, so there is a little bit less. And Loop, for example, is just not a very known application within Cegeka. But I think when we made the drop down and looked into each application, the finding was confirmed that 5 to 15 minutes a day within each application was saved.
Okay, that's very interesting.
I think it's also interesting to see the breakdown within the applications.
Yeah, okay. And what areas are people really saving time, except for the application part? Are there some specific parts that people save time in?
Yeah, I think the biggest topic we heard is meeting support, summarizing the meetings, having action points, but also analyzing data. Analyzing Excel sheets with just asking a question is huge, but also searching for information. There's a lot of information, as Ruben said, as well, spread within the organization. But when you just have to ask for the question and the information pops up, it saves you a lot of time.
Okay. Are people also seeing improvements except for the time saving? Are there some other improvements that they saw?
Yeah, I think at the beginning we were so focusing on the quantitative improvements that we actually didn't think about the qualitative improvements. It's when you start using Copilot, you really see these values as well. For example, people indicated that they get more creative with Copilot, which is cool. And also creating better documents. When I look at my own text in another language, it's just also the quality which really improves.
But also like getting started. If you sit in a blank paper, you need to write a document. The first step is always the hardest. Just getting the first draft in there from Copilot saves you tons of time and just makes it faster.
So using Copilot to get started with some things. Okay. Okay, that's very interesting. This all sounds very good and nice. But was the implementation within Cegeka actually that easy?
I think at the beginning people were searching where is the added value of Copilot, how can we use it, where not, where should we do it, and now it's evolving towards a habit. You can use it for like routine time-consuming tasks such as the meeting support we talked about, and when you ask them now, they don't want to lose Copilot, but again it's all about user adoption. We experienced that the user adoption change was bigger than the technical change, actually.
And it also depends on the personas. We really learned that not every employee within the company has use for Copilot as well. So it needs to be very specific. There are people who don't like it actually as well. But the people who love it really love it. And that's kind of the conclusion there.
Okay. What was was the hardest challenge to tackle in this project?
I think we already discussed the user adoption part. I think I'm looking at you as well for the security part.
Security was kind of a thingy. And do you roll it out for example, your management teams who've got typically access to a lot of information? Do you do that? Do you do that? Don't you do that? What about doing it across multiple locations, multiple continents? How do you want to do that? So those are all very important questions to ask. And yeah, there are some conservatives who actually say it isn't something you want to do within a company. But on the other hand, that's not the DNA of Cegeka. We are actually wanting to push the boundary forward. So for us, it was not really a hard thing. Speaking with other colleagues outside of the company, that's the primary concern. That's the question you get. How can I convince my management to allow the search for the entire set of data that is available, for example?
And what do you answer then?
You need to have security measures in place, for sure. You need to be very concise about who you want to have access on what type of data and how we are going to do that. But on the other hand, your data is everywhere today, let's be honest. If you put a Word document in there, everybody can access it. So it's something that we actually, it's not enlarging the problem. Let's put it like that.
Okay. So a good plan up front is necessary.
Yes.
Okay. Looking back on this business case for you as a CIO, was it worth the cost to implement Copilot?
I don't think you need to compare it to cost, actually, because we're talking about time saving, let's say 15 minutes a day for an average employee that uses it. For me, it's not that you're going to kick out people because you implemented Copilot. So it's not a hard saving. That's not the way you do it. But the people who are using it, let's take, for example, the project manager, they smile more because they need to type less meeting minutes, for example. It's more about those kind of things. So if you put it into the right context, with the right user persona, it's definitely worth the case. If you want to roll it out for everyone within Cegeka, for example, it won't be worth the cost.
Okay. Yeah. So you smile more now. You have Copilot.
Sure.
Okay, maybe to wrap up this conversation, Ruben, are there any other lessons you would definitely want other CIOs to know?
Yeah. Tackle it as a project. Really do that, because just unleashing it upon the company is just suboptimal value. Let's be fair about that. You really need to educate people, and that's important. I think it's important to take security into mind, because if you don't think about it, you sure will have some issues in the past, and so you will have some issues there. And the last point is really think about the personas you're going to add value with Copilot. So let's make sure that you don't have a plan to roll it out to the entire company. Probably there are companies which are useful to having that, but within a typical company, it's about 20-30% of the people, I think, that actually have full value of the solution. Taking those into account, I think Copilot is a very nice product to have for those use cases, and it really is also cool to play around with, actually. It does stuff you can't even imagine. And every week there are new features, things coming out, so you can't control it. It's really cool, and it keeps you incentivized to actually test it. So it keeps you improving.
Maybe Valérie, one last question for you. The benefit of Cegeka is that we also have the digital workplace team. Did you also work together with them for implementing Copilot?
Yeah, and I think the cool thing is that we saw the learning curve of Copilot as well from the beginning. So we saw it gaining value through each month, and it's great that they saw this also from the beginning, and that they got a chance to experience what works, what does not work. And it was a learning curve for Copilot, but also for Cegeka. And it was good to have it from the beginning and to check that learning curve.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much for sharing your insights about Copilot. We've seen that Copilot can increase your productivity, boost efficiency, and on top of that, improve the quality of work. However, some challenges may arise when implementing and adopting Copilot, such as a higher need for strong data governance, security, and continuous adoption support. Cegeka's digital workplace team can help you with implementing, launching, and managing Copilot while focusing on continuous and reflexive use by employees. We are here to help you on your Copilot journey.